How's it going, everyone? Roslyn here. So as of the making of this video, I've played over 30 hours of Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes, and so far I am thoroughly enjoying it. It's not perfect, but it has been an enjoyable experience and pretty much everything that I expected it to be. Now, I have had a couple of ideas for how to tackle this video, from doing a full-on preview of sorts, to just taking one of my VODs, cutting it up, and showing all the parts where I answered a bunch of questions about the game. And what I finally landed on was something in between. Basically, I'm going to be answering the questions I've been asked the most about the game while I've been streaming it, but instead of cutting up a VOD where I answered those questions, I'm just going to re-answer them here in this video in a more structured format. Now, if you have any questions about the game yourself that aren't answered in this video, feel free to come hang out over on Twitch at twitch.tv/RoslinGaming, and I'd be happy to answer them for you. But for now, let's move on to the first of my most frequently asked questions about Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes. The answer to this is yes, absolutely. In fact, this game is pretty much a Suikoden game in all but name. It has a story centered around political warfare instead of saving the world from some greater power, except instead of fighting over true runes this time, we're now fighting over primal lenses, and there is an accompanying war battle minigame to fit the theme, this time taking place on a grid-like battlefield in which you vie for control over tiles on the map. Duels also make a return as well, and just like before, it is up to you to decipher what your opponent will do next based on their dialogue in order to make the right choice for your actions. The battle system is turn-based and features a classic 6 party member setup, and of course this wouldn't be a Suikoden game if there weren't over 100 characters to recruit and populate a home base that you build up over the course of the game. Now, there are of course some differences between this and past Suikoden titles, but you can definitely tell that the late Murayama Yoshitaka put a lot of effort and care into delivering a true spiritual successor to the Suikoden franchise. Much like with the Suikoden series, Eiyuden Chronicle uses a turn-based battle system featuring a party of 6 characters. Your party is split into a front row and back row, as well as a left, middle, and right lanes. And where you place your party members in your party is very important. Some characters may only have a short-ranged attack, and therefore must be placed in the front row in order to actually attack the enemy. Others have a medium range and can be placed in the back row and still attack the enemy, though in this case those characters would not be able to hit enemies in the back row. And then finally, there are characters who have a long range and are suited for the back row, being able to hit any opposing enemy. In addition to this, you can have characters use skills or magic depending on what runes they have equipped. Skills cost SP, a resource that builds up over the course of an encounter, and magic uses MP, which can only be restored by using items or resting at an inn. If you happen to have certain characters in your party, then you will also be able to use hero combos. These are skills in which 2 or more of your characters team up to perform one attack or action, and they require all characters involved in the action to have enough SP to execute it. Finally, you can have your characters either use their defensive option or items. The defensive option is different for each character. Some simply guard to reduce damage, some taunt enemies to themselves, some take on an evasive stance, and some even put up a small shield on themselves that absorbs damage. And items, well, lets you use items from your inventory, something you will be doing very often given how restrictive MP is. As for how battles actually play out, you select the actions you want all of your party members to take at the beginning of a turn, and then those actions are executed in an order based on their speed relative to each other and the enemy. The turn order appears at the top of the screen in battle, so you can see exactly when each party member and enemy will take their action for the turn. The only time this ever really changes is during some boss encounters. During specific boss encounters, gimmicks will come into play. This comes in the form of adding an extra action that characters can choose to take during their turn, and can range from hiding behind rubble to avoid an attack, to using the environment against the enemy in order to deal bonus damage. Finally, you can also opt to use the auto battle option, which will have your party members take actions in accordance with a set of instructions that you set for them. There are quite a few options for customizing how each party member will act during auto battle, but for any difficult encounter, taking direct control is the way to go. Auto battle is mainly just there for random encounters when running around the world map and in dungeons. Of my 30 plus hours, a little over 10 of that has been on the PC beta client and the rest on the full release build on PlayStation 5. I don't have a copy of the full release of the game on PC, so I can't check to see if the issues I encountered there are still present, but what I did encounter during the beta were some minor graphical glitches and a fairly annoying bug in which my Xbox controller acted as if it had severe joystick drift. Neither of these issues have presented themselves thus far during my time with the full release PS5 version of the game though. Outside of that, I have experienced a little bit of slowdown during combat whenever the camera is constantly zooming in and out while selecting actions for a turn. Another place that I have experienced slowdown is when swapping between menu screens in the menu. There is always about a half second to second delay after swapping menus before I can swap to another one. I have also noticed that for whatever reason, my character makes no noise while walking in towns, dungeons, or on the overworld, despite there being a sound effect for this that plays whenever you transition between zones. The music also stops playing during the fishing minigame. I'm not sure if this is actually a bug or not, but due to how jarring it is and just really how odd it is, I'm leaning towards it being a bug. The last performance related thing that jumps out to me is with regards to the volume of two of the main characters of the game, Noah and Marissa. For whatever reason, the voice lines for those two in Japanese often sound a noticeable amount quieter and muffled when compared to everyone else. Yep, there really are over 100 characters to recruit. That being said, not all of them are playable characters that you can put into your party. Many of them are, but many of them aren't as well. Because of the home-based mechanic in which you acquire your own castle and town as part of the main story, many recruitable characters are actually just NPCs to populate the town and run various facilities. When you first get access to your castle and town, it won't have many facilities available. You'll need to first gather the resources and capital to build the facilities you want, and then recruit the appropriate characters to run them. For example, the automatically recruitable characters Sumire and Cassandra run your storehouse and inn respectively. If you want an armorer, then you'll need to seek out and recruit Frida, and then build her a place to set up shop. Similarly, you'll need to seek out and recruit Hiro if you want to be able to purchase curative items in your town, and build him a place to set up shop as well. And the process repeats itself for all the other facilities. Of all the questions that I've been asked while streaming Eiyuden Chronicle, this is, to no one's surprise, the most common one. And overall, I am thoroughly enjoying it. I went into Eiyuden Chronicle hoping to get a game that reminded me of the Suikoden franchise, and what I got was essentially a Suikoden game. The game is also almost entirely voiced, with the Japanese audio in particular so far having different voice actors for each of the major characters and recruitable heroes. I have heard though that the other language tracks do have repeating voice actors, but I can't confirm this as I've only played with the Japanese voices thus far. The auto battle feature is also nice when just running around from area to area, as inputting direct commands for every random battle can get pretty tedious. That is of course until Noah decides to use up my precious fire rune items when he's not supposed to, the little bit. Anyways, this game does have a nice quality of life feature with its party setup. In addition to your 6-person party and 1 support party member, there are 3 attendant party member slots, and the purpose of those 3 slots are to put characters into your party who are required to be there for either the main story or side quests, but that you may not actually want to use in your main party. With these slots, you can just throw them in the attendant slot and not need to worry. They'll still be there for the story or quest, but you don't actually have to use them if you don't want to. It's a small thing, but with so many characters in the game, it is very much appreciated. Another thing that I really appreciate that is probably unique to me is the ability to change the text to Japanese at any moment. While streaming the game, I do keep the text in English for my viewers, but being able to swap the Japanese from the settings menu whenever I want can let me double check item and skill descriptions for mistranslations if anything seems off, something that I actually have had to do a few times now. And speaking of mistranslations, one of my few complaints about the game does have to do with its localization. For those of you who are new to the channel and aren't aware, I have worked in translation and localization for many years as a translator, editor, and coordinator, and as such I don't sugarcoat my opinions on localization quality. And unfortunately for Eiyuden Chronicle, its localization is quite bad. My stance is that a good localization should be as if the original author had written the script in the target language themselves from the beginning. That is, that changes should only be made for readability or when absolutely necessary. Eiyuden Chronicle's localization is not like this. Many liberties have been taken with regards to character dialogue, ranging from lines that insert modern-day pop culture and memes into the setting, to lines that can have an impact on a character's overall personality. This is in addition to instances of just straight-up mistranslations that I've encountered. But not all of it is bad. The localizers decided to not use Japanese honorifics. I do personally tend to lean towards keeping them in, as many JRPG fans are accustomed to them and they can be very important. But I'm also not against removing them so long as it's consistent, and so far it has been consistent with Eiyuden Chronicle. I bring up this part because there is a character who refers to the main character Noah as Aniki in Japanese. Literally translated, this means older brother. However, the context of how it's used here is different. If you've played any of the Yakuza franchise games, then this use of the word aniki will sound familiar. There is really no direct translation for this word's use in this context into English, and the localizers correctly made the decision to not use brother or older brother, instead opting to use the word cousin. Now, this is also not an optimal word choice, but it is better than a literal translation of the word, given the context and that the Japanese honorifics aren't being used. I just wanted to bring this up because while I do think overall the localization is bad, they did do a good job on some aspects of it. Anyways, localization rant aside, there are a few more things that I found to be minor annoyances. One is with regards to description text in game. For starters, there is nowhere that I can find that gives exact descriptions on what each character attribute does. Some are self-explanatory, such as the PD for physical defense and the MD for magic defense, but then you have Dex for dexterity and PWR for power. Power seems easy at first, as of course this would affect a character's physical damage dealing capabilities, but where this gets muddy is when you look at the stat runes. You see, there is a rune called Rune of Skill, and this specifically states that it increases the dexterity stat by 5%. The thing is, the only other use of the word skill is for character skills, which calls into question, does dexterity increase skill damage? And if so, what is power for then? Just auto attacks? If dexterity isn't for skill damage, then what is it for? Maybe critical strike chance? But then if that is the case, what is the luck stat for? You see my point? I can make educated guesses that are probably right, and given enough gear that drastically increases these stats, I can do the testing too, but I shouldn't need to. A simple tutorial letting me know what each stat does would suffice, but unfortunately the tutorial for attributes says literally nothing about character attributes. This lack of information extends to skill descriptions as well. Noah and Leon both have skills that cost 2 SP to deal damage, with Noah's dealing moderate damage and Leon's bypassing armor. The thing is, they also have a hero combo together that costs them 2 SP each to deal heavy damage to a target. But how much damage is this heavy damage? I'm essentially spending 4 SP across 2 characters in order to deal heavy damage, but there is no way at a glance to know if this transaction is worth it. The answer is it's not, as foregoing the hero combo and just using each of their own skills individually results in more damage. But I would love to have more concrete values given in skill descriptions rather than needing to go out and use them a bunch of times to find out their average values. And it's not like the devs aren't willing to provide exact numbers either. The aforementioned runes, for example, give exact values. Rune of Skill says 5% dexterity, Rune of Power says 5% strength, which now that I think about it is weird since there is no strength stat. But equipping the rune increases the power stat, so yeah, it's all just kind of frustrating. But this does all lead into one of my own final personal complaints, and that is just the general underpowered nature of hero combos. These combos look cool, and I really do want to be making use of them, but they do have a cost associated with them. You first need to put the correct characters into your party, and then in battle those characters each need to have the necessary SP to even use the skills. Given these restrictions, it would be nice if the sum was greater than the parts. But so far with all the hero combos that I've tested, you're simply better off just using each character's individual skills instead. I certainly wouldn't be opposed to a patch to adjust their power and make them worth using. Now, while the hero combo thing was my last personal complaint, there is one more thing that I want to bring up that I fall into the camp of not hating nor liking. I'm just indifferent to it, and that is inventory management, specifically inventory space. I bring this up because I foresee it being an issue for many. Basically, you have a very limited amount of inventory space in Eiyuden Chronicle, especially early on. For much of the early game, you only have 30 inventory slots, and while some items can stack, such as healing herbs, you can only stack them so high. Healing herbs, for example, can stack up to 6 before they start to take up more inventory slots. So if you say have 18 healing herbs, then that is 3 of your 30 slots right there. The thing is, outside of key items and resources for your castle and town, everything else goes into your main inventory. Healing items, armor, accessories, even runes. And if you try to open up a chest with a full inventory, the game just simply won't let you. You'll need to throw away something from your inventory before you can even open up the chest. If you happen to have a full inventory whenever you defeat an enemy and they drop an item, the game will at least let you decide what to keep and get rid of, but you have to do it right then and there. This restricted inventory space also extends to your castle storehouse, as until you spend resources to level it up, it too has very limited space. As I said, I'm indifferent on this, but I wanted to bring it up anyways since I can see it being a negative for some. But that's it. Those are the 5 questions that I've been asked the most thus far while streaming Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes. I know I ended up spending a decent amount of time on some of the negative aspects of the game at the end there, but there is a reason for that. I don't doubt that there will be plenty of impressions and reviews about the game gushing over all the good aspects of it, but I feel it's important to also talk about the game's negatives as well, because as enjoyable as the game is, it's not perfect. Anyways, if you found this video helpful and informative, please be sure to leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. Also, if you have any questions about this video, Eiyuden Chronicle, or any other game that I cover, feel free to hit me up over on Twitch at twitch.tv/RoslinGaming, or my Discord server, both of which are linked in the video description below. Until next time, take care.